Hey guys, how you doing? Welcome to another episode of A Taboo Life. Other episodes of the podcast. Come check out the news article that went up this week called Christmas, MMA, and the Wu-Tang Clan. The fun side of cultural appropriation. It's a fun article poking fun of the idea of cultural appropriation because it is pretty idiotic. So check out the article and check out all other content on the website, ataboolife.com. Today's episode was a really great episode. I'm so happy that I was able to get in contact with Reverend Ken. Really interesting guy. He is a nudist, but there's another word for it, naturalist or natural. I forgot how to say it, but he is a nudist. He's been doing it for a long time. He is actually pretty well known in the community in Florida, especially during Fantasyfest, which the way he describes it sounds amazing, and I think I might do it this year or maybe next year. But it was the last 20 minutes that made the episode really great. He is a very deep guy, really fun to talk to, and he has a lot to say that I think other people should listen to. Like I tell people who listen to this show, you may have disagreements with some of these people I have as guests, and you may not agree with everything they say, but everyone has a lesson that they could teach you. If you just sit down and truly listen to them as a person, you'll always get a lesson from another human being. So that's what I get from this episode. Hopefully you guys get this from this episode. So here it is. Enjoy. We're live. Won't you introduce yourself to the audience?
I guess I'm known as Reverend Ken.
Reverend Ken.
Yeah.
And the reason we're talking today because you are what other people will say is a nudist, but you call yourself a naturalist, correct?
Naturist.
Naturist, okay.
Naturist. Naturalist would be like somebody that is into birds and animals and stuff like that. Naturist is a more polite term for nudist, I suppose.
So what exactly is a naturist?
You know, it's just somebody that enjoys being in nature naked.
Yeah.
Natural.
Yeah, like sometimes I like to walk around my underwear outside. Like I feel like it's kind of close to that.
You know what? That's probably the way a lot of people get started. Everybody has to find their own comfort level and go at their own pace, but it generally begins fully clothed and, you know, one item, then another item, and then another item, kind of like you're playing strip poker. And, you know, when you're completely naked, you realize something overcomes you. You get an inner peace. And you realize that you feel more free than you've ever felt in your life.
Well, I came close to that because I went to Burning Man last year. Have you ever heard of Burning Man?
Yeah.
Yeah, I went there last year, and you see people walking around naked, or they're walking around with these elaborate costumes,
Sure.
or just... I walked around for 2 days, just walk around in my underwear, and it felt really freeing.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that feeling, even though I felt kind of like self-conscious though sometimes. But I was like, no, what, this feels pretty good.
You know,
especially in the desert.
Yeah, no doubt. I think again, everybody, you find your comfort level and you go at your own pace. A lot of people like to test their own limits.
Mm-hmm.
And today you might be in just your underwear, and tomorrow you might say, you know what, we're going to try it without the underwear. you're going to feel a little bit self-conscious at first. Certainly, everybody would. Because you think everybody's looking at me. And, you know, this guy and that girl and everybody is more attractive than I am. But then you spend a little time there and you get to looking around and you notice nobody really cares about you. I mean, they don't. They're all involved in their own life, in what they're there for. And you get to looking around, and not only do you notice those people that look better than you, you notice the people that don't look as good as you. And you're thinking, you know what? They're here doing it. That they're not ashamed. Why should I be?
And I do notice that most of those people are kind of like the most confident. They're like walk around, they don't give a shit.
Hey, I started when I was probably 26, 27 years old, somewhere around there. Okay. I'm going to be 53 here in a couple of months.
You don't look like it.
You know what? Oh, thank you. I'm not as pretty as I used to be. I used to be very in shape. Used to lift a lot of weights. I was an athlete in high school and college.
You still look stocky, though. You look...
But back when I was younger, my chest and arms were bigger and solid. And my stomach was small and tight. And today, my chest and arms are beginning to sag, and my belly is getting a little bit bigger. I still got a six-pack. Oh. I just keep it in a really big refrigerator now.
You keep a keg instead.
There you go. Yeah.
Well, like, how'd you get started in this? You said you got...
You know what?
26?
My wife, my son, who would have been, I don't know, a baby, maybe a year old or whatever, we all went down to Homestead after Hurricane Andrew. My wife and I were in the tropical plant business at the time, and that kind of wiped out our business. Oh. So we loaded up everything in the motorhome and the pickup truck, and we went down there, and basically that's also how I got into the business that I'm in now. I'm a painting contractor, and
wow.
That's what I went down there and eventually did, was I took up painting. But while I was down there, I was reading the newspaper. This was a while back, and I still read the newspaper. It wasn't all online back then. And they were talking about the nude beach at Hallover Beach. So I said, you know what, we got to try this out. And we tried it out. We went a couple of times, and she ended up leaving me, took my son with her, and they left. And yeah, such is life. I just started attending Hallover on a regular basis, and I just really got hooked on it, and I've been a naturist ever since.
Damn. So, like, because I do have a couple questions about that. Is it a family thing, too? Because I remember reading about families do it sometimes, too.
Most of the time, if it's crowded, there's probably going to be some children there. I've seen everything from, newborns, just a few months old to 90-year-old people. Absolutely everything in between. The children just run around and play at the beach. They don't know or care. They won't even notice you or acknowledge you. They're just at the beach. They're having a good time. That's all they care about. That's all kids care about. Which that's always been sort of a stumbling block for nudists. Is what about the children?
Yeah.
And I think study after study is pretty clear that children raised in that lifestyle have better body acceptance, have more positive self-worth. It does not hurt children. It makes children better, more psychologically aware. It's good for families. It's not a detriment. The only reason that children would ever be devastated by seeing a naked person, just simple nudity, no sexual contact of any type, is when somebody tells them that they should be affected by it. Adults tend to screw up a lot of stuff. And we do screw up our children pretty good. So,
well, has there any been? Because my friend wanted to ask this question. Has there any been issues like with predators?
you know what? Nudist beach or nudist resort, your children will be safer there than any place in this world. And I'm not kidding, because people at that beach protect that beach. They protect our lifestyle. They will not put up with anybody harming children, because as soon as that happens, we all know that the people that want to shut that beach down will use that to do it.
Yeah.
And we police ourselves.
Oh, good.
We see any kind of behavior that would give anybody opportunity to close that beach, we will shut it down. The people will rally around whomever is being harmed, and we will stop it. We don't need police at a nudist beach. And your children are safer there than they are at any textile beach in this world.
It's actually really interesting, because I did an episode last month with about swingers, and like, you know, you had two similar cultures, but they police themselves too.
Yeah,
it's kind of like the same thing. Like, they don't want the outside world, or like people want to misjudge them or misjudge people like that, and they want to make sure, like, listen, we want to live our life the way we find it accordingly, but also too, we want to keep out the bad people who's going to ruin that for us.
Sure. Everybody wants to have fun. Whatever your fun is, you want to have it. You don't want somebody to take it away from you. And in the nudist lifestyle or the swinging lifestyle or any alternative lifestyle, there are always people looking for the excuse to stop you from doing it. And we work very hard to make sure that we do not give them that excuse.
Good. So I'm wearing on your webpage too. You said, like, you're also very spiritual, and does that come from the naturalism?
You know what? I am spiritual. I don't want to be misunderstood. I do not consider myself a Christian. Although I was raised as a Christian, I did my 2 years of catechism. I took some religion courses in college. So my spirituality, although it would be based in Christianity, I've come to the point in my life where I don't really believe any two people have the same religion. Everything is personal to everybody. So I've just taken my spirituality just a little bit further, and I've called my spirituality a religion.
Okay.
And it's personal to me. I'm very open about it. I'll discuss it with anybody that wants to. I very much enjoy discussing with religion with people. Mostly because I want other people to find their true spirituality. I want them to investigate and question everything that they've ever learned and the things that they have yet to learn, and come to their own pathway and find themselves down that path.
Have you ever heard of the Hero's Journey by Joseph Campbell?
I have not.
So look into it. It's actually pretty interesting. He talks about that. Basically, part of spirituality is kind of going into the unknown, or into the forest, or going into life, and you have to come to a conclusion on your own. And you do that by research, looking at different people's cultures, religions, and also what you're trying to find out too within, like your own conclusions about who you are and who you are in life.
Couple of things. One of the best ways to find your own path, your own spirituality, is when you listen to other people give you theirs. Ask these two questions. And this actually refers to any time anybody tells you anything in life, whether it's in religion or politics or buying real estate with no money down.
Mm-hmm.
Ask these two questions. How does this person know it? And why do they want me to believe it? When you answer those two questions, a lot of times you cut through a lot of the BS.
So how does this person know it?
And why do they want me to believe it?
I remember reading this book, and was a stockbroker, and he was very vulgar. You mind if I curse it for you? Or? Okay.
By all means.
It's something similar to what you said. He said every time somebody came up to him with an idea about investment, he's like, all right, how are you going to fuck me? How are you going to fuck me over? And they were surprised by that. It's like, I want to know, how are you going to fuck me over? And the ones that were honest, he did business with them. So he's like, okay, you're not going to fuck me over, but we're going to do business together.
Right. I do have a small business, and although I give people a formal proposal, I don't actually require a signed contract.
Really?
I feel that I'd much rather do business on a handshake. Anybody that requires a contract, in my opinion, they're doing that because they're thinking, if I was in your position, this is how I would screw you. Mm-hmm. So that when you are requiring, now I don't do anything really big. If I do any really big jobs with a business or something like that, yeah, there's always a contract. But I just do small little jobs for homeowners. Hey, I've got their address. I know, I have a pretty good relationship with my customers. And actually, my customers are gold. Mm-hmm. My customers are absolute gold. I fall in love with most all of them.
So that's pretty amazing that you still have that old school method of doing business. Like, it's just a handshake. I'm keeping my word. You're keeping your word.
Well, I think a lot of my customers really appreciate it, and to the point where on my proposal to them, I have on there payment in full upon completion to owner satisfaction. And I look them in the eye and I tell them, you do not give me a dime until you're happy that this job is done the way you want it. And I have had a couple of jobs where I did not feel that the person was truly satisfied with my work. They gave me their check and I never cashed it.
Really?
Yes.
You never take a down payment? Like,
nope.
Just for the materials?
I don't anymore. I used to. Back few years back, when I was starting out and I was struggling, I didn't have the money to float the job. I had to have material costs, and I had to have some money in case somebody did decide they weren't going to pay me. But now I'm in a situation where the paint store's crazy enough. They let me sign my name and walk out with the paint. I just got to pay them once a month. What they don't know is eventually I'm going to die, and my son is instructed, when I die, you don't pay any of the bills. You take all the cash and live your life on it. So eventually my paint store is going to lose out on that last paint bill. I just hope it's a big one.
What the last paint store. So going back to naturalism. Am I saying that word right?
Naturism.
I don't know why I keep going natural.
It doesn't matter.
How big is the culture in Florida? Because I know
it's huge in Florida. It's huge. Haulover Beach.
And where's Haulover?
It's just north of Miami. It's between Sunny Isles and Bow Harbor. Mm-hmm. And I believe it's a 3-mile stretch. It's actually owned by Miami-Dade County, so it's a county park. Even though the beach is I think it's 3 miles long, there's only maybe a quarter of a mile that is set aside for nudism. And I have been there, and sometimes there are thousands of people there. It's huge. But you've got a lot of resorts here in Florida. A lot of them seem to be centered around Pasco County, Tampa, St. Pete, that area.
It's prettier water.
There's a couple of really nice resorts. there's a few I go to that are just very nice resorts. And, just it's big lifestyle here.
See, I always want to go to one, and I haven't gone to one yet. I looked into it, I looked into a hotel in Key West a couple of years ago because I thought when I had the money and time to do it, I was going to go out there, just try it once, go to a little resort.
Oh, there's a bar in Key West called the Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
It's north of, what is that, the Bull and Fitch, I believe it is. Or north. It's upstairs of the Bull and Fitch. And it's a pretty good time. Most of the time when I go there, it's not very crowded. But if you go for either Fantasyfest or New Year's, it gets pretty crowded, because Key West in general is pretty crowded at that time. So,
because I only been to Key West once. That was back when I was, I think 19 or 20. I couldn't go into any bars, but I know when we first talked on the phone, we were talking about Fantasyfest, and you're actually famous within this culture. So,
I have been going to Fantasyfest. Oh, geez, I think since 2005. I think I've only missed 1 year.
Well, why don't you explain to everyone what's Fantasyfest? Fantasyfest
is anything you want it to be. If you can't find it in Fantasyfest, you really didn't want it bad enough. It's a 10-day hedonistic festival. The rules are very relaxed. But if you do happen to go over the line and break those rules, you will be arrested. Okay. There are police everywhere. And there is a fantasy zone. Within that zone, you're allowed to walk with open containers and consume alcohol in the streets. There's tons and tons of women walking around wearing basically nothing but body paint. I don't wear much other than my tattoos and my flip-flops. And I got some pretty wild tattoos, so that is what has made me somewhat known there. I get my picture taken quite frequently down there, and every year somebody comes up to me and says, "Hey, aren't you that guy that we've seen either at Hallover or at the Nude Night Art Festival in Orlando, or aren't you that guy?" And I'm like, probably, because there's nobody else wearing the tattoos that I've got.
What tattoos do you have?
Well, you see that I've got socks tattooed on me.
Looks pretty cool.
I actually have bikini underwear tattooed on me. And I've got stars and planets and celestial things all over me. It's sort of the name of my church is the Universal Church of Freedom, Acceptance, and Love. So I'm sort of building a universe on my body.
Oh,
so
living by what you preach.
Yeah, and actually there are some people. I'll go to Fantasyfest, and there's some people that I'll bump into, and they literally come up to me and say, "So what have you got new this year?" So got to show them that.
And you said you got a lot of piercings too, right?
Yeah, I've got 20 piercings.
Enlighten us, where are the piercings?
Well, you see the one in my nose. I do have my septum pierced. That's one. I have 19 below my waist that are genital piercings.
Ooh. Yeah, I always want to ask about that. Does it hurt when you actually get it?
If it hurt too bad, I probably would have stopped a long time ago.
Okay.
I've been pierced over 50 times to get what I've got. But some of them have been pretty intense, and some of them, it's almost laughable that it's so easy. I've found through the years that the anxiety building up, getting there, is worse than the actual pain. The pain is an incredibly intense pinch.
Really?
And the pain is over before ouch even comes out of your mouth.
Huh.
It's literally, it's that quick. It's just boom, and it's done. And then, the piercing lasts for years and years and years.
You don't have to get it redone as long as it stays in there, right?
I have had problems with some of mine. That's why I've had so many through the years. Sometimes they just migrate into a funny position and it no longer becomes aesthetically pleasing. Or I've had some where I've rejected them, and some, like, the jewelry just falls out, and being as where they are, they will close up within, depending on the piercing, they'll close up and I can't get jewelry in it within like maybe 30 minutes. So,
no shit.
Yeah.
That fast?
Yeah.
Wow.
I guess I've been told, I don't know how true it is, but I've been told it has to do with blood flow. The better blood flow an area has, the quicker it will close up.
Well, it's a penis, so it's going to have a lot of blood flow.
Hopefully it does. If not, well, you better go see a doctor.
Go see a doctor or take a pill.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's not a too personal question, because I do wonder about this.
My life's an open book. You ask me anything you want.
Sexually, how does that work with all those piercings?
Just got to wear a condom.
Just wear a condom?
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt or anything? It doesn't get caught nowhere?
No. There are, every body is different. I've had some women that really enjoy it, and I've had some people that don't. Women that don't like it. Some piercings are uncomfortable to women. Some make them happier. So, no two people are alike.
It's whatever the flavor is.
That's it. That's exactly it. And there is a learning curve to it, but, sex between any two people, doesn't matter who you are, there are uncomfortable positions for everybody.
Yeah.
So, you just, two people, you're there to have fun, you got to work it out.
Communication.
That's it. Communication is the key.
Well, I remember I read something this week that this is from like a sex therapist saying that one of the biggest problems, especially Americans with couples, that they don't communicate like what they want sexually.
Exactly.
And they're afraid to communicate it.
Because everybody is afraid that somebody is going to think negatively about them. If they tell you what they want, somehow you're going to think that they're a bad person because of it. Hey, we're all the same in certain respects, and we're all different in those respects. What causes us to experience joy is the chemical reaction that our body has from the stimulus. The only thing that's different to generate those chemical reactions is the stimulus involved. One person, it might be a foot fetish. Another person, it might be a tickle fetish. Another person, it might be spankings or being tied up. But even though we're all different in the stimulus required to achieve that goal, the process is the same for all of us.
Yeah. Yeah. A couple of months ago, I did an interview with an actual sex therapist, and we were talking about that. How I've been guilty of it too. That men are afraid to communicate. Like, I like to be spanked, or I like to be choked, or like I want to be dominated. Like, it's like a hard thing saying that to men, because like it might be just what I got from it too. That is the rejection process. Like,
especially
when it comes to sex, that's a really personal.
Sure, and if I call somebody on a telephone and I try to sell them a membership to this club and they hang up on me and reject me, that's pretty tough to do.
Yeah,
and that's done over the phone. There is nothing personal there.
Yeah,
you're naked in front of somebody, and y'all are trying to make each other happy. And somebody rejects you like that, that's just about as personal as it can get. So yeah, I could see fear happening there, and that's where again, everybody goes at their own pace. They find their comfort level. If you're with a woman the first time, or a man the first time, whomever you happen to be with, you might want to just, it's just straight missionary, a little bit of foreplay.
Yeah, because it's new.
Yeah. And then the next time, you might say, hey, you know what? I really liked it when you did this, but how about if you try that? And, the longer you're with each other, hopefully, the more comfortable you become, and the more you're able and willing to communicate with one another and really find what gets you going.
Yeah, this is all about open communication.
Communication is the key.
Communication is the key. Now, do you have any interesting stories from going to Fantasyfest? Like any fun situations?
Well, I try to get down there Thursday night usually. Sometime, if I could, I'd like to go for the whole
quickly,
time,
when's the dates for that?
It's the last day would be the Saturday before Halloween. Okay. Whenever Halloween is, and if Halloween happens to be on a Saturday, that's the last night of it. But it's 10 days. It starts the weekend before, runs all week long. The later it gets in the week, the more crowded it is. Saturday night, they have this huge parade. They'll get like 70,000 people on Duval Street for this parade. And, I mean, they bus them in. They just bring bus after bus after bus, and the streets are just packed. There are some areas where it's literally shoulder to shoulder, and 4 or 5 people deep from the fence on the edge of the street to on the curb to the building behind you, and it's almost impossible to get through there if you're trying to walk up and down the street. It's just packed with people, and again, of all ages. People bring their grade school children, and I've seen, 75, 80, 90-year-old people there just having a good time. But I like to get down there on Thursday night. Each night has sort of like theme parties at different bars and stuff like that. And I like to kind of hang out at Sloppy Joe's. Thursday night they have a toga party. And I wear something that I guess could be considered a toga, only a little smaller. And, I like Sloppy Joe's, and I go down to Captain Tony's, and in that area is probably the more risque area. Okay. And the police, even though there's definitely police presence there, the only thing they're really concerned about is fighting.
Yeah, of course. They don't want any violence.
No violence. Yeah. People get hurt. There's not supposed to be any drug usage, but I smell pot, It's obvious some people are doing whatever it is they're doing. Be subtle.
Yeah.
And the police will just, if you don't give the police an excuse, the police will not bother you. There's not supposed to be any actual nudity. You are supposed to be covered. But I'll be standing there, barely covered.
Just like a little banana hammock?
Yeah, well, something like that. Yeah. And somebody will come up and they'll see the tattoos and they want to take my picture. And eventually the piercings become noticeable. And instead of having 2 or 3 people standing around me taking my picture, I've had crowds of 20 or 30 people standing there taking my picture. Women coming up and, they ask, well, what does that feel like? I'm like, I don't know. I've never put it inside myself. But it's a good time. I have men come up to me with their woman next to them and ask, I don't want to sound weird, but can I get your picture? Because I've got all these pictures of women's tits and everything, and my wife wants to see a picture of a dick. I'm like, by all means. So, I'm a crowd pleaser.
Have fun.
And I've had gay men come up and say, "Hey, can I get my picture with you?" I'm like, "Sure, I don't care." It puts a smile on somebody's face, and I get a real kick out of that. Just for that brief moment in time, I get to make somebody happy, and it's so simple, and that actually makes me happy. I like to spread joy.
I mean, it is a fun thing. Like, you get something out of it. It's like, I get some attention, have some fun out of it, and also those people get something fun out of it too because you are an interesting person. Yeah. It's like, man, this guy's a fucking cool guy. I'm glad we met him.
And again, I'm a fat old man, and I have, beautiful women in their 20s and 30s coming up to me and telling me how awesome I look. And
I mean, you look good for your age, though.
You know what? That really, I think that has to do with my job. I don't just own my business. I work my business. And, I'm not sitting at a desk or riding around in my truck all day. I'm actually out there painting houses, climbing up and down ladders, and busting my hump all day. So that tends to keep me in relatively good shape. But I've actually, one of the best stories was last year. I think I've become a faith healer.
How so?
Well, I got down there last year on a Thursday, and I'm walking down the street, and there was this girl being pushed in a wheelchair. Some guy was pushing this girl in a wheelchair. She smiled at me, and I waved, and she went her way. I went my way. And then on Friday, I saw her being pushed by this guy again. And I think we had a couple of words, but she was being pushed by a guy. Yeah. So, I just, very few pleasantries, and she went her way, and I went my way. Then Saturday, while the parade was going on, I'm walking up the street. She's in the wheelchair, but no guy. She gets up from the wheelchair, walks over to me, gives me a kiss, and says, "My boyfriend." So I figure somehow I must be a faith healer. I got this woman to walk.
Or she's just faking it. Or she's like, man, I don't feel like walking.
Another good story I have. Are you familiar with Jenny from Miami TV?
No, I'm not. Who's
that? YouTube. I first started seeing videos of Jenny. I cannot pronounce her name.
Hispanic last name?
Yeah, SC something or other. She's very cute girl. Very cute girl. She goes down to Fantasyfest every year and interviews people in the streets. And she's very scantily clad. Just sort of got the basics covered up. And she's got, a cameraman there with the professional camera and the lighting and the professional microphone, and she's interviewing people. And I was just standing there one year wearing like the banana hammock that we're talking about, and just my tattoos, and I had a hat and flip-flops on. And I'm watching her interview these people, and then I realized who it was. The camera went off, and she started walking towards me. I said, "Hi, Jenny." And she says, "Oh my God, I got to get you on camera." She looks around, and her cameraman's gone. And she says, "Oh, well." Cut to the following year. I see Jenny again. She's interviewing some people, and I walk over and I say, "Hey, Jenny, do you remember me from last year?" And she says, "I get that asked all the time, but believe it or not, I actually remember you." I say, "Is it because of the bikini underwear tattoo?" And she says, "No, it's because of the mustache." I'm like, "Really?" Okay, then. And she says, "That's not a tattoo." I said, "Yeah, that's a tattoo." She actually puts her hand and squeezes my butt and says, "Oh my God, that is a tattoo." So we're talking for, it seemed like minutes, but it was probably just, 15, 20 seconds, whatever it was. She goes her way, I go my way. And then last year, I saw her again. And I said, "Hey, Jenny." And she said, "Come on over here." And she's interviewing me. And at the end of the interview, she says, "You can pick a card." And I picked a card, and it says, "Squeeze my butt for 10 seconds. So I put my hand on her butt. She counts to 10, and that was over. And I said, "Well, that seems fair. You squeezed my butt last year." But she's a very cute girl. I hope to see her again this year. She's very open about nudity. She is also trying to sort of do what I'm doing and spreading body acceptance and being positive about naturism and nudity and trying to help people understand that, it's just skin. We've all got it.
Yeah.
It's just some people's skin might look a little bit nicer than somebody else's.
Well, I'm glad you brought up body acceptance because myself and a couple million other Americans feel like we get, talk for myself mainly. I get self-conscious about my own skin.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I work out a lot, but I still got a belly. And I'm kind of fine with that. I'm like, I don't want a six-pack. I just want to be healthy and keep my muscle mass.
Well, something that I've come up with over the years is that no person will find every body, 2 words, every body, to be attractive.
That's true.
But when we look closer, you'll find that everybody, 1 word, everybody, is beautiful.
It's true. Very true.
You might not like the size, shape, color of my skin, but I'm more than that.
Mm-hmm.
You're more than that. Everybody is more than the size, shape, and color of their skin, or the age, or the appearance. We're all more than that.
Yeah.
And one way to discover that is to keep pushing your limits. You never know who you really are until you keep pushing yourself to find out who and what you really are. And this isn't for everybody. Not everybody will be comfortable being naked.
That's true.
But if you're not comfortable being naked, you know what? Maybe you should try it again.
Yeah, try it by yourself first. Go into the backyard and
sure.
Walk around.
Hey, we're all naked when we're taking a shower.
Mm-hmm.
Very few people are going to be self-conscious in there. You get out of the shower, you look in the mirror, and then all of a sudden things change. You look at yourself, and if you do not find yourself to be attractive, oftentimes you think, well, nobody else could find me attractive. And that's just not true. I've seen people that I don't find attractive, but they're walking down the street with somebody who does.
Mm-hmm.
So what I think is irrelevant. They've found the person that finds them attractive. They found the person that brings them joy. That's cool,
One thing I found kind of interesting to touch on that is that I read this little post about Pornhub loves doing statistics. They love researching their viewers, and they found out women, mainly because you look at women in America, they have that self-consciousness coming from advertisement from models and actresses being super skinny and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Men go through it too because you see these actors or bodybuilders,
sure,
and they have to have 6-packs, and people forget they're also taking steroids. They got professional they got professional instructors that have studios paying for them to get that shit.
And a little bit of airbrushing don't hurt.
Airbrushing and CGI. But they said the most interesting statistic with women was they were looking at more. They find him more attractive than a man had some weight on him and had hair.
Sure.
And I'm like, okay, good. I'm in the right category.
I'm actually a relatively hairy person. As a matter of fact, a few years back, I was sitting on a couch with a girl, and we became, I guess, amorous for the first time. And she was rubbing my chest with her hand, and she looks at me. She says, "I love that you're hairy." And I said, "I'm Ken. Who in the hell is this hairy guy?"
Who's hairy?
Actually, a few weeks back, I was up in Jacksonville at a fetish club, and I had a female dom burn the hair off of me.
Oh, shit.
She calls it fire shaving.
Yeah, I remember you telling me on the phone about that.
That was pretty interesting. It's something I saw it online. She said, if anybody's interested and you're not scared, give me a message. Send me a message. And I thought about it the next day, and I'm thinking, you know what? This is something I have to do. I have to prove to myself that I'm not scared, and I can do this. So I sent her a message, and we chatted back and forth for about a week. And I went up there on a Friday night, and I met her for the first time. And that's when, again, the anxiety started to kick in.
Mm-hmm.
Because now you're thinking, this is really going to happen. Somebody's really going to set fire to me. And, she had to take a look at my body to see how much hair I had and stuff like that. So I disrobed, and she put her hand on my chest and felt it. And she's like, "Oh my God, you're like a shag carpet." She says, "There's no way I can get this all the way down to the skin." I said, I'm good with that. Just, do what you do. I'm here. Do what you do. And she's explaining the process to me. Then she tells me that she's going to do a real quick thing for the audience,
Mm-hmm.
And then she's going to call me up and she's going to do it. So there was, I suppose, probably right around 40 people there. I don't know. I didn't count them. But I was sitting in the audience just wearing a towel, and she calls me up,
mm-hmm.
and I'm standing there. We had to do it on a massage table.
Yeah.
So I'm standing in front of the massage table with my back to the audience, and I dropped the towel.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the people had never seen me. There's maybe a handful of people that knew me, so they'd seen the tattoos and everything. But I dropped the towel, and it's the first time everybody saw my butt tattooed and everything, But they didn't see the front yet. So I jump up on the table, and they probably kind of saw, but didn't really see anything yet. So she starts with my thighs. She just takes a implement that looks like a big Q-tip.
Mm-hmm.
And it's on fire, and she just taps it down my one thigh and just kind of wipes the fire away with her other hand. She does that a couple of times on both legs, and then she gets another implement, which basically it looked like an ice scraper, but it had cotton wrapped around it, and she had that soaked in rubbing alcohol.
Okay.
And she just put a line of rubbing alcohol down the front of my thigh,
mm-hmm.
and then tapped it with her ball of fire, and the fire went down my thigh, and
mm-hmm.
she just wiped it away with her hand. She did that a couple of times. Then she started on my chest.
Yeah.
And I wasn't on fire for any great length of time. Again, it's one of those things that time just seems to never stop, but that it was only a few seconds. It was just a moment here or a moment there that I was actually on fire. But you definitely did smell the burning hair. I do have a lot of it. But she did my chest while I was still laying down, but then to do my stomach, she had me stand up so that the audience could see. Okay. And now for the first time, they got to see the tattoos and the piercings. And, I could just sort of see their faces, a couple of jaws dropped and stuff like that. And I got a real kick out of that. I do kind of like to shock people. And after she did my stomach, then she had me turn around, and that's when it kind of got intense. She did what she calls fireballs. She gets a squirt bottle
mm-hmm.
full of alcohol. She's got her cotton swab that's on fire.
Yeah.
That's between the spray bottle and you. She's
mm-hmm.
got the cotton ball on fire, and she sprays the alcohol at you. It catches fire, and then it goes whoosh over you. That got pretty intense. I thought that night I had no pain or anything. I
mm-hmm.
had absolutely no discomfort. Everything was controlled.
Was it smooth? Like, was your skin smooth, or was it like...
No.
Okay.
She maybe got about half of the hair off of my chest.
Okay.
But on my back, I don't even know how much hair I had on my back or how much disappeared. It's on my back. Who cares? But at one point, the following day, I started noticing a sore spot on my back. And I thought, maybe there's a little bit of a burn back there. And for a couple of days, it was uncomfortable. And I even sent her an email message just letting her know that, I was a little uncomfortable for a couple of days. I wasn't complaining. I just felt that she would want to know so that she can be better equipped to make sure that she does not ever harm anybody. Well, a day or two later, I came to realize that the problem was I had an ingrown hair on my back.
Ooh.
And somehow the fire made it come to a head, and I popped it, pulled the hair out, and pulled all that pus out and everything. Pain was gone. So I thought it was kind of weird that the fire seemed to be the catalyst that brought that to a head.
Huh.
So I emailed her back and said, sorry, not your fault.
Good thing there's a health benefit to it.
Yeah, it seems to get rid of ingrown hairs. So if you got some, I recommend fire shaving, I guess.
What? Out of curiosity, can you say the name of that club on...
It's Club Kink Jacksonville.
Okay, I gotta look it up because I need to see if I could meet some people there for episodes.
You gotta talk to Kat.
Kat.
Kat's the woman. She's a very special person. She's a female bodybuilder, and it's her club, and she's just a very special person.
Okay. I'll look that up later. Man, you had a couple of notes when I walked in. What do you want to talk about?
A couple of things, I guess.
Actually, before we begin, what's the deal with the hearse?
Oh,
I want to ask about that.
Okay. Well, actually, that's one of the things I want to talk about.
Explain. Well, let me explain really fast. When I pulled up and you told me like a easier way of finding your house, there's going to be a white hearse in front of it, and there is. So
I kind of like to do things a little bit different. Most of the vehicles I've owned recently are not normal. I like something a little bit different. I've owned a couple of Fieros. I've owned an El Camino, stuff like that. And I was in the market for a new work vehicle, and I saw a hearse on the car lot. But I got to thinking, I can't really drive that for work. That'll kill my business, so to speak. So I bought a Ford Explorer at the time. But I told him, I said, when I pay this off, if you guys still have that hearse, I'm going to buy it. Because I wanted it for my personal vehicle. And I paid off the Explorer, and they still had the hearse. So true to my word, I went and I bought it from them. And I made it my personal vehicle. Now, that's not the hearse you see out there. That was a different one. It was a black, it was an 87 Buick.
Ooh.
I actually ended up putting side pipes on it. It looked pretty cool. And I used to have a little foot hung out the back door.
Yeah, as a joke.
Yeah. And people would drive by me on the road laughing and pointing. They'd take the picture of the vehicle and stuff. And again, it made people happy. Well, eventually, my work truck had to go to the mechanic. Needed brakes or oil change, whatever it was. And I'm like, oh boy, I got to drive the hearse to work. Okay. So I drove the hearse, and I go in. I'm working in the house, and about an hour later, the homeowner comes up to me and says, "Did you drive a hearse?" I said, "Yeah." So we walked outside. We talked about it. We laughed about it. And that car, when I bought it, it was showroom new, inside and out. It was a beautiful car. Wow. But then, I just went back to drive my work vehicle, and again, it, needed work, so I had to drive the hearse again, and I got positive results. Neighbors came up and talked to me about it, and didn't, nobody seemed to mind. It brought a smile to people's faces. So eventually it was time to get a new work truck, and I'm like, screw that. I'm driving the hearse. I'm going to get a new personal vehicle. So I made that hearse my work truck. And people just loved it. People would come out and talk about it, and I'd start talking about the car, and they're like, "Oh, well, you know what? I need my house painted. Come give me a price for that." So I paint their house. That's pretty good marketing right there. I think one of the funnier parts about it is when I pull up somebody's house in the hearse. eventually somebody calls them and says, hey, is everything okay over there? We see a hearse parked out front of your house. And, of course they have to come up and tell me, oh, my friends are asking about me. And I'm like, that's how you know who your real friends are. If somebody sees a hearse parked in front of your house and they don't call to find out how you are, they don't care. But then I kind of beat that car up. I drove it for, probably 3 years. It got a little bit beat up. And one of the guys that works for me, his car broke down, or his truck broke down. He needed a car, but he couldn't afford one. So I'm like, you know what, dude? I'll sell you this hearse cheap. And I got to thinking about it. I'm like, if I sell this, if I don't have another hearse, I'll kill my business, so to speak. So I bought another hearse. And this time it was a white Cadillac. It's a 92 Cadillac. And I get so much business because of that. And I've actually got looks like a Florida replica license plate on the front, says Nude Beach. Mm-hmm. And on the back, I've got a big sticker that says, you are dying to ride in this vehicle. Love life to its fullest.
You're dying to ride it.
And I've got a pair of hands that stick up in the back window. Looks like somebody's trying to crawl out. And again, people, they drive by. They have a smile on their face. They're taking pictures, and they're waving at me, giving me thumbs up. It's making people happy. And as we've already discussed, I enjoy putting a smile on somebody's face. If it's just that brief moment in time, just to make somebody happy, that really brings me a great amount of joy. And what I have determined with all of this, the nudism, the cars, the tattoos, basically, now you're going to have a hard time believing this, but this is not bullshit.
Okay.
I am a very shy person.
Really?
I am scared to death of people.
No
Rejection.
Shit.
I used to sell cemetery property. I've sold cars. I've sold waterless cookware. I've sold all kinds of stuff. And I had to put my anxiety aside to go and talk to people, knowing full well that most of the people I was going to talk to were going to reject me. Mm-hmm. And it scared the living hell out of me each and every day. Even now, I'm still selling. I'm selling my business, something I firmly believe in. It's still very hard for me to go and talk to people. I make myself do it. The way that I get around that fear of people is, instead of me going to them, I invite them to me with my exhibitionism. Mm-hmm. The car is a great way for people to come to me and talk to me. I don't have to approach them. I don't have to worry about them rejecting me.
Yeah.
I know they're coming to talk to me, and they've already accepted me.
Yeah.
I've got this thing in my nose. A big part of that is because it's just a way to get people to understand things differently. I've had most of my customers are very conservative. This town, most of the people here are older and very conservative.
Most of Florida.
Well, from here north, yes. From here south, it's a little
better. Yeah.
A little more liberal. But I want people to look at people differently. I'm not a stupid person. I'm relatively decently, I guess, educated. And I carry myself and present myself very well. Mm-hmm. And people know me as a serious person. But I've got a septum piercing. And a lot of conservative people think people with piercings are not good members of society, let's say. So I challenge that line of thinking. And people accept me for who I am, even though I have this piece of metal in my nose. Or I've got a couple of tattoos. I've got a watch tattooed on my wrist. And on my right arm, I actually have the words wet paint. And I have a little bucket of paint and a paintbrush. So it allows people to see that I have tattoos and I'm a good person. They like me. So why can't they give somebody else a chance? You know, the car, it's the same thing. And also, it sort of keeps assholes out of my life. Through the years, I've had a couple of people that have looked at me and said, "Oh, I can't even talk to you with that thing in your nose." Or, you know, you've got nude beach on your license plate on your car. You can't paint my house.
Yeah.
Doesn't upset me a bit. Chances are good that person with that attitude would not get along very well with me. So if they don't want me in their home, I'm good with that.
Yeah.
There's plenty of other houses.
Yeah, go your separate ways.
But all of these things I do, the tattoos, the piercings, the cars, it's just a way I'm exhibiting myself so that people will come to me. And it's for my comfort level. And it's sort of a shortcut, but it seems to work. I've actually gotten to meet a lot of really great people. And people that I never would have met if I didn't have all of this stuff going for me. And actually the mustache also. I've got a pretty good mustache going. So, you know.
You got that freaking badass mustache going for you. It looks good. It looks good on you, man.
You know, I just like to be a little bit different. And I've said this in my business several times where I tell people, we don't paint houses like everybody else in Florida paints houses. The way everybody else does things is average. I don't do average. I do wow.
Wow.
I do wow. Whether it's in my business or in my personal life, I don't want to be average. We do wow.
Individualism.
Yeah, but individualism is great, but we're still all members of society. Mm-hmm. So as far as who I am as an individual, it doesn't mean a damn if it doesn't somehow benefit society as a whole. I could very easily be an asshole.
Yeah.
And I have the right to be so as an individual. But how would that be better for society? It wouldn't. So, you know, I want to be pleasant. I want to put smiles on people's faces. I'm quite certain that all up and down the East Coast, there are stories about Reverend Ken. They might not know who I am, but they've seen the car, they've seen the tattoos, and they tell the stories.
And the legend.
A matter of fact, the week after I got my fire shaving done,
yeah,
I realized that the hair on my body was all blotchy, and it didn't look good. Because, you know, she couldn't take it down even, and she had spots that got done more than others, and some spots didn't get done at all. I looked kind of weird. So I went to the lady that does my hair, and I said, could you take some clippers and even me up a little bit? And she did. And while she's doing that, she was telling me that some friends of hers they went to a club in Orlando, and they saw this guy with these tattoos, you know, the planets and the stars and the underwear tattoo. And she says, did he have a bunch of piercings? And I said, yeah, he did. She's like, oh, that's Ken.
That's Ken.
That's just Ken. So, you know, people do tell stories, and it makes them happy. It's a positive influence, even though some people look at my lifestyle and say, well, he's a pervert. Or, you know, I go to a lot of the beaches and resorts I go to. Oftentimes I go by myself. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes a single man in either a nude beach or a nudist resort, people think the word creep. Yeah. He's a creeper. Those two words piss me off. For a couple of reasons. One, everybody walking the face of this earth, or that has walked the face of this earth, or will walk the face of this earth, is a pervert to somebody else.
Yeah.
Everybody does something that creeps somebody else out. Everybody's a pervert. Everybody's a creep to somebody. And what gets me is people want to be accepted for their life and their lifestyle, but then they look at other people and do to them what they don't want to have done to themselves.
That's very true.
You know, you're a pervert, but ignore the things I do that somebody else might think are perverted. We're all different as individuals, but we're all exactly the same as individuals. You know, life is an endless series of problems and solutions. Okay? You get up in the morning, what's your first problem? I gotta go to the bathroom. That's usually a pretty easy solution, right? Next problem, I'm hungry, or I need some coffee, or I need a cigarette. Again, usually very easily solved. We all have to go to work. It's a different job. It's a different route. But we all figure out where we're going and how to get there. We solve that problem. We all have to do the work that we do. Problem solution, you know. You go home. Again, you're hungry. You're bored. You've got to eat. You've got to entertain yourself. You're tired. You go to bed. We've all had exactly the same day by doing things different all day long. We're all exactly the same. We just do things differently doing it.
Yes. It's really deep. I was taken back by that, man. That's really, really deep.
I've kind of been thinking about stuff like this for a long time. So.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the reasons why I started doing this podcast, because I love to travel, and you know, you meet different people, and everyone has a good story to tell, and I kind of want to show the world, like, hey, maybe start talking to other people instead of going on Facebook or going on the internet. Just try to get another person's story and listen to what they actually have to say, because it'll be nine times out of 10 you're gonna be blown away by something they did, and there's still one or two that, sadly to say, never really did anything with their life. They never took a risk. They never changed. They never grew.
I've traveled quite a bit on the East Coast. I think I've only briefly been across the Mississippi River. You know, and that was just because we were working in Mississippi, and I saw a sign that said Mississippi River, however many miles. I said, we got to go. So we went across, we drove back, and that was the only time I've been west of Mississippi. But I was born and raised in Ohio. I went to college in West Virginia. I met my first wife in Virginia. My second wife and I spent most of our time together in North Carolina. I've lived in Atlanta and Chicago, and lived in Miami. I've lived in Jacksonville. I've lived in Roanoke, Virginia. I've lived Huntsville, Alabama. All over the place. So, you know, I've seen a lot of things, been a lot of places, and I've had a lot of really great experiences meeting people. I just love people. I really do. Because we're a pretty crazy species.
Yeah. Yeah, we are.
We make absolutely no sense whatsoever. And yet somehow we're out looking in the universe trying to find intelligent life. I think we ought to try to find it here on Earth first.
Start a White House.
Well, yeah. we'll leave that one alone. For a little while.
Okay. What else do you had on your list?
Actually, I would like to talk about a letter I wrote to USA Today's editorial page a few years back.
Yeah, what was that about?
I was reading a story. Again, this is probably 2005 or 6, something like that, back when I was still actually reading a newspaper instead of reading it online. I was reading a story in California. They were closing down some of the clothing optional beaches. So I wrote a letter to the editor, and I don't remember the exact words, but basically I said everyone needs to visit a clothing optional beach or resort. One quickly learns that size, shape, color, age, sex, none of that really matters. We're all just people. I wrote that. I think I actually sent it in on the computer. And then I kind of forgot about it, but a couple of days later, a lady called and said, we're from USA Today. Ooh. You sent this in. Just want to make sure this is you. And if we need to edit this for spelling or anything, is that okay? I said, yeah, whatever. And again, I just kind of forgot about it. A couple of days later, I'm sitting in my truck, eating breakfast, waiting to go to work. I flip to the editorial page, and I see Kenneth and my last name in there. But I still didn't register. I'm like, oh, hey, cool. Somebody's got the same name as mine. Then I read it, and I'm like, hey, that's my letter. Now, here's the cool part. That was my birthday.
No shit.
Yeah, it was on my birthday. And that evening, I went over to visit my mom and dad after work, and Dad says, congratulations, I'm now a nudist. I said, what? Apparently, one of the people from South Florida Free Beaches saw the article, looked up my phone number, which happens to have been my father's phone number and not mine, and left a message on his answering machine saying, thank you for the letter to the editor, blah, blah, blah. So that's an interesting way to be outed to my parents as a nudist. Fortunately, I was in my 40s at the time, so, they got over it.
Oh my God.
That again, what I said, that's true. When you go to any type of a nudist situation, you're always thinking, do I measure up in whatever way? Whether it's the size of your sexual organs or the size of your stomach or, the wrinkles that you have or the body hair that you have. And, like I said before, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you look like. Somebody's going to love it. Somebody's not going to love it.
Yep.
Get over it. Go hang out with the people that love it.
Yeah. Or who don't mind it. And I just don't care. Hey, I love beautiful women. I love to look at beautiful women. Some people say, well, I don't go to nude beaches because there's so many guys there. I'm like, yeah, don't look at them. Don't look at them.
If there's a guy and a girl walking down the beach holding hands, selective vision, man. Look at the one you want to look at, and the other one, they're not even there if you don't see them, right?
Quick question, because I just thought about this.
Sure.
Erections. What's the rule about that? Like, I know it happens. Sometimes it happens by accident.
Actually, I'm glad you brought that up, so to speak.
Yeah. Brought that up.
I think that's sort of a problem we have in our culture today. Even women breastfeeding in public.
I think that's stupid. Like,
there is nothing more natural in our lives than a woman breastfeeding a child.
All mammals do it.
Not only that, but I mean, that just, it tells me that woman cares about that child.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing. I just read an article last week, I believe it was, where a lady was asked to cover up. She was in a restaurant, and somebody came over and said, well, cover up. She put a blanket over her head. Like, good for you. But erections are also natural. Yeah. It's a part of who we are. It happens. I have had an experience before where I fell asleep on the beach. And I woke up with an erection.
Morning wood,
People walked by. They saw me laying there. They saw that. They probably might not have known that I was asleep.
Uh-huh.
So I'm sure some of them used the word pervert and creep because they had limited information.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd already determined who or what I was. But it happens. It's part of nature. When it happens, you don't make a big deal out of it. If you're on the beach, maybe you roll over. You cover it with a towel. Walk into the water. Whatever. It goes away. Now, if you stand there and you make a big deal out of it,
mm-hmm.
There's probably going to be some people on the beach that are going to say, hey, that's not appropriate. Don't do that here. And if you do it again, we're going to ask you to leave and you're not going to be allowed to come back. It's natural. If it happens, it happens. But for the most part, it's not going to because most men are scared to death. And when you're scared, the blood ain't flowing there, man. And actually that's true. Within the chemical makeup of who we are is that flight or fight response. And part of that flight or fight response is your genitalia shrinks up to make a smaller target. If you're in a fight, your penis and your scrotum shrivel up, so it makes less of a target.
Yeah,
okay?
I remember that.
So when the anxiety level is high, the blood flow is low. So chances are good if you're a new person there, you're probably not going to get an erection. Once you become more comfortable, that's probably more likely, but now you've already learned how to handle it. You know what's going on, people understand, and just go on with it.
For example, let's say if I do go to a nudist beach and I'm talking to an attractive woman, and it accidentally happens to you to say, "Excuse me, I'm sorry," or
yeah. I mean, if you're both standing, it's probably not a problem. You just keep looking in her eyes,
Yeah.
If you start making suggestive comments or actions, then it might be considered inappropriate. If she happens to be sitting and you're standing, that's probably not appropriate. Things happen to be at the wrong levels. Hey, you know what? Put your towel down, sit down. Or just say excuse me and walk away, and just let her know. I'm sorry. I'll come back or whatever. Be polite. Just be polite.
Okay.
But that really does sort of bring up another point that I wanted to talk about, was the way our culture looks at nudity compared to violence. You can put violence in a movie. You can have 10 guys firing 1,000 shots at the good guy. Somehow they miss the good guy with all 10,000 shots. The good guy can turn around, fire 3 shots to kill all 10 of them. But you can behead people. You can show guts and gore all you want in a movie or in a video game. And parents don't bat an eye. It's like, Johnny's watching a movie. But when it comes to nudity, whether it's in a movie or in real life,
or art,
yeah, people are like, oh, what are we going to tell the children? Well, don't tell them anything. Let them figure it out. I think the best way to teach children anything is you teach children how to think. You live your life in a way that you'd be proud for them to emulate. You let them figure out the rest for themselves. But, we put so much emphasis on body shaming people. It's not right for you to see this, or it's not right for you to do this when you're naked. But violence, we glorify it.
Yeah. Well, when you brought that up, I remember reading, I forgot where I read this from, but when the first James Bond movie came out, Dr. No, they had 2 different reactions, one in England, one in America. When the English saw it, they said, hey, it was too violent. They didn't see that much violence before. Then when you go to America, the big complaint was, oh, this is too sexualized.
I think that's something that really needs to change. And that's when I say I want to help out with body acceptance and body, the nude body, or even like the tattoos and the piercings and body modification acceptance. Because I think that's important to our society, to have people understand that there's no shame in being naked. I mean, even in the Bible, there are passages in the Bible where God says, don't be naked. Okay? But there's also passages in the Bible where God is completely cool with nudity. He has sent people out to be naked, specifically. So God, in the Bible, doesn't have a problem with simple nudity. Why do we as a culture? Because somehow someone determined that it's a bad thing. And a lot of people say, well, it's our puritanical roots. And that's not true. The Puritans, they weren't pure. If you actually look into the Puritan lifestyle, they were a little more amorous than most of us would think. Yeah. Our founding fathers, you want to talk about some perverts.
Ben Franklin.
Yeah, Ben Franklin. Most of our founding fathers would have looked at Bill Clinton and called him an amateur. But it goes to the temperance movement of the Gilded Age, the Victorian era, where people like Harvey Firestone, the Kellogg brothers, and Henry Ford started telling people, go to church, don't smoke, don't drink, live a pure life, sex only for procreation, not recreation, things like that.
You're not supposed to have any hobbies. The only thing you're supposed to do is work.
Work and go to church.
Yeah.
And, whatever two consenting adults want to do, so long as they're not doing tangible harm to anybody that's not participating in their life or lifestyle, who cares? Who really cares? But then, on the other side, when we show all of this violence and we romanticize war, and we make it okay. And you get the argument, some people say, well, we need to get violence out of movies because it affects people. And then you get people on the other side say, study after study shows that it doesn't affect the behavior of a person. You know what? Those studies, I'm sure they're accurate. But are they complete? They might not show from person to person any deviation in our thought process.
And it depends what I actually studied, too.
But I believe that it has affected our culture and our society as a whole. It has not desensitized from person to person, but it has the entire culture. Our entire society has been affected by it. And banning it today or censoring it today, I think it would eventually have an effect, but it would not be an immediate effect. And our culture today is, if it doesn't have immediate effects, it's not working. It might take several generations for the effect to truly be noticeable. So people would argue, why bother? Which, you know what? If you don't start now, it'll never change. I don't remember the story completely or who told it, but a short version, a lady says, I'm 50 years old. If I go to college 4 years from now, I'll be 54 years old before I graduate. And the other person says, well, how old are you going to be 4 years from now anyhow? So, if we don't do something to change things now, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now, we're just going to be 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now, further down the road. You've got to...
You got to sacrifice in the moment.
Well, I don't think... Sacrifice...
And by sacrifice, I don't mean in a negative way. I mean, like, you have to take... You're willing to do a job that's going to take years to get the results for it. That's a sacrifice.
Let's say invest.
Yeah, invest.
Invest is a better word. We need to invest the work today to make life better tomorrow. And I hear an awful lot of conservatives say, well, we have to cut taxes and we have to cut spending and we have to cut this and we have to cut that because we don't want to leave our kids and our grandkids with this great amount of debt. Which I know is a lie because they're not willing to do anything else that has long-term investment for their kids and their grandkids. They don't mind chemical plants polluting our water and our air and not leaving clean air and water for their kids and grandchildren. Why the hell do they worry about their tax bracket?
Yeah. Or a war that's been going on half my life.
I saw something, I don't know, I don't remember when I read it, but something about our country has been at war for all but like 10 years of our existence or something phenomenal like that. Our country has been at war almost every year that it has existed. That's pathetic.
Yeah.
That is absolutely pathetic. If we cannot figure out ways to solve our differences with other countries besides going to war with them, we got some problems.
Well, so I think we're coming to that point where everyone has a stalemate now with the nuclear options. Like, all right, we need to find better ways. Because I don't like the idea of nuclear arms, but also, too, it's like the world's a smaller place now. It really is a smaller place, and we got to learn to actually do business with each other in a better way.
Right. I think I'm kind of starting to run out of what I really wanted to say. Yeah. Do you have some questions for me that you'd like to ask me?
Yeah, get these questions done so get you ready for work tomorrow, and I get ready for work too.
Now, I will warn you, don't ask me a question that you don't want to know the answer to, because you cannot unhear anything.
That's fine.
You asked me a question, and one of my biggest flaws is that I'm sort of honest to a fault.
All right.
Okay.
I do want the honest story, so that's what I want. All right, just to give you guys a reminder of what these questions are, I ask these questions to everyone except for 2 people on the podcast, because these are more interpersonal questions to show like everyone you can relate to another person, even though you may disagree about their lifestyle or their political affiliations, yada yada yada, but we could all relate to another person. So these questions kind of help so the people I'm interviewing, or to the audience, that the people I'm interviewing is a person you can relate to if you ever met them in real life. Alright. So, given the choice of anyone in the world from any time period, who would you want as a dinner guest and why?
Dinner guest and why? Just because we mentioned his name earlier, I wouldn't mind Ben Franklin.
He'll be fun. He'll be a fun guy.
You know what? I think he and I would actually relate rather well. He was a naturist. He understood. He was, most of his life, he was an atheist. Later in life, he sort of, I guess, claimed to have been a pantheist.
What was a pantheist again?
Pantheist is a person, or I'm sorry, not a pantheist, a deist.
Oh, deist.
A deist. A good amount of our founding fathers were actually deists, not necessarily Christians. But he understood, even though he did not believe in God, he understood the value of being in the right pew at the right church to keep the proper appearances up in society. And he also understood, the saying, you don't shit where you eat. Mm-hmm. Well, that's why he went to Europe so much, because that's where he went and played and participated in some pretty wild orgies and whatnot.
His freak flag
Yeah, there you go.
His freak
there
flag
you
was
go.
flying.
I actually used to have a bumper sticker on my other hearse that said, "Let your freak flag fly." I like that. Had it not been for him, our country probably never would have come together. Everybody, whether you're liberal or conservative, you often will say, "But our founding fathers, ... Here's the problem with that. Our founding fathers were as diverse then as they are now. They fought and they argued. There were some people on the left, there were some people on the right. Ben Franklin was the great compromiser. He's the one that brought them together. You know, simple one was the House of Representatives and the Senate. You know, some of the founding fathers said each state should be represented equally. And some said, well, each state should be represented according to how many people live there. And Ben Franklin said, why can't we have both? You know? Plus, you know, he played some music, he invented some things, he was a great thinker. He's somebody that I would really like to talk to. I think he and I would get along great.
Take him to Fantasyfest.
Oh, I'm sure he'd love
He's like,
that.
What? This is what America became? Yeah. What would constitute a perfect day for you?
A perfect day? You know what? I first of all, I don't believe that there would be a perfect day. I enjoy most of the days I have. I'm fortunate. The people that I work for, I told you before, my customers are gold, and I fall in love with most of them. I really enjoy working at their houses to the point where I've had customers that the day I leave their house, I'm saddened. Because some of those people, I know I'm never probably going to see them again. Even though I could, I know where they live, I could drive right over there. But I know I'm probably never going to see them again. And that kind of makes me sad sometimes. And I've got the people that work for me, I love them. I mean, I love the people that work for me. They are special people. And they're good painters. They make me some money, and that's great. But they're not just good friends of mine. They've become members of my family. So I enjoy what I do, getting up in the morning, going to work, doing it, coming home. It's a good time. So I don't say I have a perfect day every day, but I have a pretty damn good day every day of my life.
It's probably the best thing you could ever hope for, work for. All right. If you could change anything about the way you were raised, what would it be?
My family, my mom and dad, first of all, let me say, I know they loved me. Okay? I know mom and dad loved me. But love was not something that was open. It was not necessarily shared. And I've gone most of my life not really feeling as though I'd ever been loved by anybody. My father made a very good living. Pretty much everything we ever wanted materialistically, we were allowed to have them. But growing up, now I may not be remembering correctly, but I think I am. I never recall having my mother or father tell me, "Ken, I love you." And I think that has affected some of my personal relationships through the years. I've been married a few times, and I've lived with some women and had some girlfriends through the years, some significant others through the years, whatever. And there always seems to be one common denominator that destroys each and every one of those relationships. And it's me. I have some personal problems because of my childhood, and I think that's really what it stems from, is I really never felt loved as a child. And to this date, I cannot name too many people that I've ever really felt truly cared about me. So, there's that.
And it's kind of hard to believe because you're such a loving, like you seem like a person that it's easy to love. It's not, like, it won't be too hard to love you.
You know, I think part of my problem is sometimes I become too enthusiastic. Mm-hmm. I become overbearing, and I smother the other person.
Okay.
And I think that drives them away sometimes. Or, maybe part of it is the other way, where once I start feeling close to somebody, it makes me uncomfortable and I run away. So, the way we're raised, it affects the rest of our life. And, I'm not blaming my mom and dad. I never would. My dad passed away, about 8 years ago, a little bit over 8 years ago. My mom's still alive. I don't blame them for anything. Not one thing. I'm just sort of getting through life, learning to cope with the way I was raised and making the best of it that I can. And that's all anybody can do, I guess.
The thing is, you seem like you get a lot of wisdom from, you understand who you are. A lot of wisdom in that.
Yeah, my father was a pretty smart fella. He taught me a lot. He definitely taught me a lot. So,
okay. We'll do a little fun question. If you wake up tomorrow with any superpower or ability, what would it be and why?
Superpower or ability? You know what? That's something that everybody always thinks of, and so many people really ask it. I guess I would just like to have more knowledge. If I knew everything, sitting here not knowing everything, I think that would be great. However, that would be some pretty intense pressure, which would probably drive most people insane, but I'm already almost there anyhow, so why not? I'd like to know everything.
I'd like to know everything. Know everything. My friend who I interviewed, we were cops together. He actually had a good answer for that. He said, everything that he would say will come true. That will be his superpower.
Ooh, that'd be scary.
It will be scary, but he's a big comic book guy. We love comic books and the superhero movies, the nerdy stuff. So he actually thought about that question for a long time before he answered it.
Okay.
So that was his based on comics. So, when was the first time you fell in love? And the first time you had your heart broken?
Oh, wow. I guess that would have been Laura. I was 20 or 21. She was in her early 30s, I believe. We worked for a company. She was from Chicago. I was from Ohio, but we were working in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And the company had us in a pretty big apartment. There was, I think, 3 or 4 bedrooms and a bunch of bathrooms. So even though there were some men and some women there, it was all segregated and everything. But we kind of got together and sort of fell in love. And then she decided to quit. She moved back to Chicago, and we tried to do that long distance thing for a while. It didn't work. That was the first time that I ever thought that I was in love, and first time that my heart was broken. So that certainly wasn't the last time. Probably still haven't found the last time.
And there will be a last time.
Well, in a good way. But then I'll be dead.
Way. No, there'll be a last time, but a better way than this death. If you're going to wake up tomorrow with no memories except for one, then which one would you keep?
The day my son got married, I performed the wedding for my son, and I had a very special friend that was there with me, and we not only was doing my son's wedding was just absolutely amazing. I was amazed that I didn't break down and bawl like a baby halfway through it. But having my friend with me and experiencing the wonderful weekend that we had, that's probably one of my favorite memories that I'll keep for the rest of my life.
Beautiful. Very beautiful answer. Is there something you dreamed of doing for a long time, and why haven't you done it?
I'd like to either jump out of an airplane or, what's the other? Hang glide.
Really?
Yeah, I'd like to try that sometime. Now, I will tell you that if I ever jump out of an airplane, I ain't taking no parachute.
What?
Well, a parachute might not open up, right?
Uh-huh.
I'm taking a drop cord and an air hose because they're bound to snag on something on the way down.
Drop cord and an air hose?
Yeah.
What
you ever tried to roll up either a drop cord or an air hose?
What's a drop cord?
Drop cord, long extension cord.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
They always snag on something.
What happens if you're just clouds in a field? It's like, oh, fuck, I'm just getting naked.
No, I really would. At some point, I'd like to either parachute or hang glide or, something like that. I just think that would really be cool.
It'll be fun. It's good the experience of actually flying.
Now, why haven't I done it yet? I'd kind of like to have somebody do it with me.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that I would like to have somebody do with me, and I haven't found somebody that'll do it with me. But eventually I'm going to give up, and I'm just going to damn do it.
Do it during Fantasyfest. See if you can parachute into...
Yeah, well, that could be a relatively fun experience, I suppose. But, there's a lot of water around there, and there's probably sharks around there.
Yeah.
So I don't want to parachute into no sharks.
Bait!
Yeah.
It's like bait.
Yeah, it's a hooked worm, though, so be careful.
Yeah, it's a hookworm. What are you proud of but never had an excuse to talk about it?
What am I proud of? Never had an excuse to talk about. I don't really need an excuse. You know what? I learned between high school and college, I learned that if I don't talk about me, I get lost. In high school, I was a pretty good student. I was a pretty good athlete.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody really knew who I was because I was the quiet little kid that sat in the back of the class and never said anything. And I went to college. I played football. So, I got down there a little bit early for summer camp and all that stuff. And I get down there and I'm in my dorm room. And I just sort of, I guess you'd call it, I had an epiphany. I said, nobody knows me here. Nobody knows who I am or what I am. I can be anybody I want to be. So I made sure that people knew me. I became the big man on campus, and ever since then, I'm not shy about letting people know who I am and what I've accomplished. So I talk about me. I let people know who I am. I'm not ashamed to tell somebody that I'm pretty smart.
Uh-huh.
I was accepted to some pretty good colleges. You might not know it, but I was actually a pre-med major.
No shit.
I took honors science courses, and I did rather well in high school and college. It's kind of a weird path to get from there to here, but I blame Ronald Reagan, so screw him.
Blame Reagan.
Well, my freshman year in college, I had a pretty good financial aid package. Mm-hmm. And then Ronald Reagan decimated financial aid for college students. Wow. My sophomore year, I couldn't even have college work study. I couldn't even work for money. He people talk about how, Ronald Reagan was such a great president. The man was an ass, and he started the destruction of this country. And people think, he lowered taxes. My ass, he lowered taxes. My father was a corporate accountant. Mm-hmm. He voted for Reagan once, refused to do it the second time because he knows what I'm getting ready to tell you. He raised taxes in this country. People aren't smart enough to understand how he did it. Yeah, he lowered the percentages. Mm-hmm. He removed the tax breaks you had. And this is how that screws up an economy. Taxes can be too high. Yes, they can. Taxes can also be too low. Mm-hmm. But here's how taxes help an economy. You tax the shit out of people. And then you give them tax breaks for spending money. Mm-hmm. And you know what they do? They spend money. You know what an economy is?
Spending
money that keeps moving from one person to another. You give corporations and you don't cut a corporation's taxes and say, I think they're going to hire people, because they're not. I think Donald Trump just proved that. If you want a business to hire more people, you give them more business. Mm-hmm. The way you give them more business is you make sure they have more customers. More customers means more people have to have money to spend.
Yep.
That creates more business for companies, which creates more jobs. But if you want to give a company tax breaks for creating jobs, you tell them you create jobs, then you can have a tax break.
Or what's it called? Not a stipend from the government. What do you call it when it goes? Subsidize. You get a little subsidy, we'll kick something through you.
Basically, that's what tax breaks are. Yeah. They're a way to subsidize an industry or a company or something like that. You want a company to be more environmentally aware. You don't give them a tax break and say, this tax break is so you can build this to become more environmentally safe. You tell them, you become more environmentally safe, then you can have the tax break. Because, corporations are not going to do what you hope they do.
No.
They're only going to do what they're forced to do.
Well, that's what they
have to do.
That's what they called, I remember reading about that what they call Reagan's economic plan was voodoo economics.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember watching a documentary about it, and his son was the main person they were interviewing, and his son was really critical of Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan Jr. is a very liberal, outspoken liberal. Mm-hmm. Too bad his father didn't. Too bad his father changed so much from when he was governor of California to when he was president. He was just. But in all honesty, our presidents are all puppets anyway. They're all puppets. But you keep asking your questions, and we'll get back to that because I saw you've got one that we're going to elaborate on the puppetry.
Oh, which one was that? Because I'm getting close towards the end. Because, like I said, I skipped some of these.
The one about the conspiracy theories.
Yeah, we'll do that one. What conspiracy theories do you believe in?
The Trilateral Commission.
What's that?
They're the puppet masters. I had a customer. He passed away about 4 years ago. But I did some work for him and his wife for maybe 10 years or so. He was a retired CEO from one of America's most iconic corporations. I'd rather not use the name because I don't want anybody to use Google and figure out who this person was. But the first job I did, one of the rooms we did in his house was his study. And he had a whole bunch of pictures with him and presidents and vice presidents and blah, 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 blah. And he had this one picture. I saw this picture and I thought, who in the hell is this man? And I had to go home and Google him. The picture was him. He was on a stage walking towards a person behind the podium with his hand out to shake it. The person behind the podium was saluting him. The person behind the podium was Colin Powell. And I'm thinking to myself, who in the hell do you have to be to where Colin Powell salutes you? So I Googled this guy. Him and Colin Powell were buddies because they were on the board of directors of a big charity here in this country. And turns out this guy was on the Trilateral Commission. So I had to read what the Trilateral Commission was all about. I guess basically it's made up of the president's cabinet, the House and the Senate leadership, and then it has like the board of directors of every major bank and every major media outlet in America. And they get together every once in a while and have meetings, and they're documented that these people are in. And there are, people hang out, wait for these meetings, and they videotape the people walking into the building. So these things do actually happen. The conspiracy theory is every presidential nominee that we have had since Ronald Reagan has been a member of the Trilateral Commission. Everyone. They've been electing our president. Think about it. They control the media, so they know the person that they choose gets the right press. The person that they choose, they run the banks, so they determine who gets the financing. And I think that's how we got stuck with Trump. They finally said, we're getting our guy. Trump was their guy. Who was the one person that Trump could beat in this world? Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
You're telling me that's the best that... Now, I personally think Hillary Clinton... I don't think anybody in this world has ever been more prepared to be our president than Hillary Clinton. She had the brains for it. She had the ability for it. She damn sure could have done the job.
Yeah.
But she is so divisive that I don't believe she ever would have been effective. She has way too much baggage. For the Democrats to have allowed her to be the nominee, they really screwed up. Because a ham sandwich could have beaten Donald Trump, and the Democrats couldn't even figure out how to run a ham sandwich against him.
Yeah, then
they were handpicked by the Trilateral Commission.
And people kind of forgot, too, that the DNC screwed over their voters.
Yeah. Donald Trump, one of the few things he got right was it was rigged. Yeah, it was rigged, but he's saying it was rigged against him. I kind of think it was rigged for him. Because you think about who was in their field running against him. You know what? Turns out the best two were Bush and that cat from Ohio. Is it Kasich or Kasich? I'm not sure.
I know we talked Kasich. Something.
Yeah. But that's the one conspiracy theory that I believe in, is that our politics, they really are rigged. And I see these bumper stickers on these cars say, "Take America Back." Well, I agree with the sentiment, but I don't think we have the right reason behind taking America back. America is supposed to belong to the people, not the politicians. And the politicians, they just don't care. At one point I said the Democrats and the Republicans were, the same. They're both bought and paid for. And in certain instances they are. When it comes to the economy and to war, I think they are pretty much in cahoots with one another. The social issues, there's still differences there.
Yeah.
But they are both bought and paid for. I think the Democrats just would rather take our tax dollars and give them to people in need, where Republicans would rather take our tax dollars and give it to rich people. So in that respect, yeah, Democrats are better, but I'm still an independent. But I am liberal, so.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a weird time in our country. I feel like I couldn't vote for either one of them. I wrote in two senators' names who I was disappointed. One was a Republican, one was a Democrat, and it was Paul Ryan. I wrote his name in on, and I got disappointed with him because I thought he was going to have some more of a spine behind him. And then I saw what Trump was doing, and he didn't really speak up, or he kind of like, what do you call it, just enabled him.
Yeah,
and it kind of pissed me off because I thought, like, okay, you're a young guy. I thought you had good ideas, even though I agree with every idea you have. I thought you would be a good, like, conservative person, like, to kind of uphold a moral ground, and he wasn't. I was really disappointed with him. But I believe before something great could happen, we have to go through a trying time and grow from it.
You know, I mean, we've been through some trying times before, and this country has made it through to the other side, and I believe we've become a stronger nation because of it. So let's hope that happens again. I'm sure it will. I just hope it happens quickly, because this crap's getting old.
Yeah, well, I think we're actually coming to that point with, like, we need a change badly. Like, the system we're doing right now can't.
Well, look, the scary thing is, if we impeach Trump, we still get stuck with Pence, and he's a scary son of a bitch. His ideas are just, you know, at the very least, he won't insult our allies, and he has, I don't know, he's not a total cad. At least he has some
diplomacy.
Yeah, and he seems to at least have some honor. I'm not real keen on his bigotry and hatred towards some Americans, but at least that's tolerable. And I don't know, we can get around that. Some of the things that this moron's doing, we can't get around it. Just can't get around it. He's making an absolute mockery of the office, and he has absolutely destroyed this country in the eyes of the world.
Yeah, there was supposed to be despite kind of some of our bad presidents we had. I'm not a big fan of Bush Jr. I am a fan of the senior, but not the junior. At least they had respect for the office.
Yeah. You know, senior, I kind of like senior. As a matter of fact, the guy I was telling you about, the CEO that was my customer, he was actually pretty good friends with senior. I think he was a very intelligent man, possibly to his own detriment. And that's, if anybody that doesn't believe me about what I said about Reagan, go ask Bush Sr. He'll back me up.
Yeah, he said it.
Because that's why he didn't get reelected. He couldn't fix what Reagan screwed up.
Yeah.
But here's an interesting thing. I read in a book, I think it was called The Flyboys. Bush Sr. was a flyer in World War II. And I'm hoping I remember the story correctly. I might mistake a detail here or there, but I believe before Iwo Jima, there was I think the island was called Chichijima, I think. And they were trying to take that. And he was doing something that's called strafing, where you fly low and you fire at whoever's down below, right? Well, his plane got shot down, ended up in the drink. And a sub came up to get him, but had that sub not come to get him, about 2 minutes later, there was a boat coming to get him. And if that boat would have gotten him, every prisoner that they took that day, they killed him, buried him. A couple of days later, they dug him up and ate them.
The Japanese?
Yeah.
No shit.
Cannibalized them. I think that the theory was, you know, if you eat their liver or their spleen or whatever it was, you gain some sort of power or something over them. So we were that close to never having Bush Jr. or Sr. for that matter as our president. Just a couple of minutes away.
Just a couple of minutes away. Got lucky. All right. 2 more questions. What's the biggest sacrifice you made in your life?
I don't know that I've ever really... I don't think I've ever done anything that I would consider being a sacrifice. I do things for people that cost me time or money, but I don't believe that it's a sacrifice because I do it freely and I do it because I draw enjoyment from helping people. So there's a lot of things that I do that others would see it as a sacrifice, but I don't. Mm-hmm. I see it as, what did I tell somebody the other day? I don't remember what the conversation was really about, but it was something about me giving somebody money, and I made the comment, money I have, it's peace that I lack. And I'm willing to exchange one for the other. So if I have the time or the money to help somebody else might see that as being a sacrifice, but I look at it as it's not really putting me out, and it helps somebody else out, so why not? But I don't think I've ever really done anything in my life where I've sacrificed anything. I give freely, I do freely. If I didn't want to do it, I wouldn't, so it's certainly no sacrifice.
It's beautiful. Very beautiful. That's the first time I thought about that question the other day, so that's my first time asking that
to
someone.
I like the question. Yeah. I like it.
So I'm going to start asking that more often. And this is the last question. I ask this one to everyone.
Uh-oh.
What is the worst thing you've ever done, and what is the best thing you've ever done in your life? So it's a 2-part question.
The worst thing I've ever done was probably when the mother of my son left me. Mm-hmm. I pretty much abandoned my son for several years. It's the one, probably my only regret in life was that I was not there physically for my son. I did not get to see my son grow up. From the time she left to the time I really got to see him again and start spending time with him, he was probably maybe around 10 years old, so I missed a really big chunk of his life there. But even once I started to see him, it was only for a couple of weeks during the summer, and then as he got older, maybe he'd come spend the entire summer with me. So the worst thing I ever did, I abandoned my son, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make up for that, knowing that I never can. A friend of mine years ago told me, you never outgive your get. Back when he told me that, I kind of thought it had more to do with, if I give you something of substance, it's not as much as what I get from you in return. The thank you or whatever. But it works the other way too. If you give pain and suffering, you get more pain and suffering back. I don't know how much pain or suffering I caused my son by not being there for him, but I know how much pain and suffering I've gotten. And it hurts. As far as the best thing I've ever done, I guess part of my penance for doing that to my son is that anytime I see somebody in need, I try to help them, no matter who it is, no matter what it is. If somebody needs something and I can help them, I'm there. I will do it. And same friend told me something else. Dave was something pretty special. He was a pretty sharp fella. Another thing he kind of taught me or shared with me that I've carried through my life was like I've helped people like had broken down cars on the side of the road. Uh-huh. I'm not a mechanic, but I'm mechanically inclined, and there have been times I've actually called my brother, who is a mechanic, and said, "Hey, how can I help this person fix their car?" And I fixed their car, got them going off the side of the road, and they've offered me money. And I don't take it, and I repeat to them what Dave told me once. He said, "You know what? One day a while back, somebody gave me a favor. Today I'm giving this favor to you, and all I ask in return is that someday, when somebody needs it, you pass this favor on to them." It's sort of paying it forward, as Woody Hayes liked to say. So I think that's part of how I'm able to overcome the bad person that I once was I have transformed myself into a caring, empathetic person that I am today. So,
like I said earlier, you just exhume like I don't feel threatened by you, or I feel like you'll just exhume love. You feel you have a good soul about you.
First of all, thank you for saying that, but mostly thank you for noticing that. When I was younger, I was not a very nice person. I would get into fights, and I would say terrible things to people, and I didn't care about anybody but myself. I was kind of a dick. And some things happened, and I realized that some of what I thought was true back then was not true, and I had to take a serious look at who I was, and I had to transform myself. I mean, when I was younger, you know what? When I was younger, I probably would have been a Trump supporter. Uh-huh. Because I was a racist and a bigot.
Yeah.
I was a misogynist. I didn't like, immigrants or anybody different than me. But you know what? I didn't know anybody different than me back then either. I was raised in a small little farming community in Ohio. The only people of color that I ever saw growing up is when we went up to Cleveland to an Indians game. Uh-huh. I was in the car. They were out the window. We drove past them. That was it. That was my experience with people of color. Even the high school I went to, I think my entire school years, I might have had 3 or 4 black kids is in the same school. Not even in the same class or classroom, just in the school. And even the college I went to Bethany College in West Virginia. Not a lot of black people going to that school. But there's a couple of brothers, not brothers, black brothers, but they were both brothers. Brent and Brian that went to Bethany. And one day in practice, we were practicing a play. I was a guard, and we ran a sweep, and I turned up field, and I hit the defensive back, which was what my job was, and I was very good at my job. I knocked this kid ass over teacups. And after practice, he came up to me and said, "Hey, man, you really hit me hard in practice." I'm like, yeah, so, you know. And he says, I see you in the weight room all the time. You're good with weights. I want to get bigger and stronger so people can't hit me like that. Will you be my lifting buddy? I said, yeah, man, anytime you see me, you come lift with me. And we did. We lift every day. I lift back in college every day. 7 days a week I'd lift. And we got to become very good friends. And game day was Saturday. And after the game, you were free until films on Sunday night. And films on Sunday night started at, I think it was 7 o'clock. And the building that they were in had granite steps going up to glass doors and windows. Well, it was raining that night, and Brent and Brian were running late. So they stopped the car, they ran up these wet granite steps, and one of the doors was open. It was opened, I don't know, either to the right or to the left, but Brian guessed incorrectly, and he went through plate glass. And it cut his lungs in half, and he died 3 hours later. And I thought to myself, this kid was a beautiful human being. Had become a wonderful friend of mine. And all these years, I didn't like people because of the color of their skin. And there is no way, no how, I would ever dislike somebody because of the color of their skin. Because it's not the size or the shape or the color or the age or the sex of a human being that counts. It's what's inside that person. It's the character of every individual that matters. And from that day forward, I determined that I was always going to look at each individual person, and I was never going to judge them. I was either going to willingly accept them as a part of my life, or I would consciously decide to not be a part of their life. But I would allow them to be the person that they wanted to be. I don't want someone to change me because they want me to change. I only want to be changed when it's brought to my attention that what I'm doing is wrong. And I think every time somebody shows me the hypocrisy in my life, I examine it. If I understand where the hypocrisy lies and I deem it to be a credible assertion, I'm going to apologize for my behavior, change my behavior, and become a better person for it. Unfortunately, most Trump supporters are going to see the hypocrisy in their life and they're going to defend it. But I've led a pretty good life. I've had to fight and scratch a couple of years to make it, but I always knew I would. And life's good. Life is good right now. I'm in a good spot. I've got some great people around me. I'm fortunate in that I can pick and choose what I want to do when I want to do it. And I don't have to answer to anybody but me. And I'm a pretty easy person to keep happy. So, I guess in a nutshell, that's who I am.
I really want to thank you for doing this episode. This probably was one of the better episodes I've made. Probably one of the best ones to answer or to actually do, because it was really deep. It was a very deep episode. It got really deep.
Well, we shared a couple of text messages, and you said you were interested to hear my story, and I told you I was looking forward to telling my story, and I thank you for the opportunity to do so.
And thank you for actually telling it.
Well, most people in this world do not have a voice. People on the radio get to say what they want. They sort of have a bully pulpit.
Not really.
Not
really. They'll get controlled too.
Yeah, to a point.
Yeah.
People in politics, they get to say what they want. There are a lot of people with a lot of money that get to go and be with politicians or people in the media, and they get to express their feelings and say what they want. They have a voice. Most people don't have a voice. It's kind of why you see protests in the street or protests with the NFL players. People that don't have a voice, oftentimes when they find something that they're passionate about and they need to speak out, sometimes it comes out in the form of a protest. And sometimes it's going to offend people or upset people. But, if you get upset with the protest, maybe you need to step back and listen to why they are protesting. And if you do so and you honestly listen, you might be more offended at what they're protesting than the fact that they're protesting. So I don't really have much of a voice. Not too many people really get to hear me. So I was thankful for this opportunity, and I got to use my voice today, and I hope some people hear it. And I'm not naive enough to think I'll ever change anybody's life. I would like to effect change in the world. I know I won't change the world, but I can change my little piece of it. Just like you can change your little piece of the world. And everybody that will listen to this podcast has the opportunity to change their little piece of the world. And if enough of us do that, then guess what happens? The world does change, doesn't it?
You gotta start with helping your neighbor.
You sure? Help your neighbor.
Well, first yourself, then your neighbor.
Well, when you're in a position to do so, certainly. Like you said, help yourself first. Put yourself in a position where you can help others. And, if somebody needs help and you can do it, man, it doesn't hurt. Just do it. You'll get a good feeling. You'll get a good feeling. And that's more, you'll never outgive your get. You might give a couple of bucks or a couple of hours labor, but you'll have that good feeling for the rest of your life, I promise.
Yeah, and you never know how those small good deeds might mean something immeasurable to that person you did it for.
Sure.
Like, you might just say, like, you help a woman push her car out of the road and give her a few bucks for gas, and you probably won't think about that ever again. But then that woman, from her perspective, she's like, I'm going through a divorce, my boss sucks, I hate my job, I'm not sure if I'm loved. And you do something like that, and that may just change her viewpoint of the world, and that's enough to get her on the right track. It's like, you know what, things are going to get better. Slowly but surely, things are going to get better. And people forget about that. Like, it's usually the smallest of gestures that goes some. It's the same thing like a bad gesture. Like you tell somebody to go fuck off for some reason, and you don't know what how that person might take it. Maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe they're going to do divorce or bankruptcy or something, and they might have to go home after that, get drunk, and do something stupid.
You're right. What we do affects everybody. You can just be walking down the street. Let's say you're downtown Chicago at lunchtime on a beautiful summer afternoon, mm-hmm. and there's thousands of people walking this way and that way and the other way. And everybody walking towards you, you notice, is smiling. But you're in a bad mood. So you've got a frown on your face. If people see you frowning, that might just turn their smile into a frown.
Yeah.
And then the person that they next see walking towards them might see that. And, you know, a smile is contagious. And the only thing more contagious is that damn frown. You know, you can spoil everybody's mood in downtown Chicago on a beautiful sunny day with just one lousy frown. So, you know what? I try. You know, I'm like everybody else. I have my days. I have my moments. I have bad moods. And there are times I go into work and I holler and I scream, and it just happens. It just happens. But 9 times out of 10, if I do it and I know I'm wrong, I'm going to go hat in hand and I'm going to apologize to the person. And I'm going to say, you know what? It's not you. It's me. Even though sometimes it really wasn't me. But, you know, I'm okay. I don't need anybody to think that I'm Superman. I don't need anybody to think that... I don't have to prove my manliness to anybody but myself. And that's one of the reasons, actually. That's one of the reasons that I've done some of the things that I've done, like the fire shaving. Mm-hmm. I think probably my first piercing, I got it because I just had to prove to myself that I could do it. But like piercings and tattoos are sort of like eating peanuts. You can't just stop with one. So I've collected them. I've eaten a lot of peanuts through the years too. Go figure.
Yeah, I have 3 tattoos, and slowly but surely I have a couple ideas of what I want to do, but slowly but surely I'll add them up.
Yeah. How old are you?
30. I'm be 31 this week.
Ah, cool. Well, happy birthday. If I'd have known, I'd have baked a cake. I wouldn't suggest eating it, because I've never actually baked a cake before.
Okay, well, thank you for this. Thank you for being open, and like I said, I'm really thinking this is one of the better episodes, probably one of the best episodes I've made so far.
Cool.
Thank you again. And
I'm looking forward to hearing it. I definitely need to get a link so I can share it with some people.
I'll email you. I'll give you, not email you or text you, but I'll make sure you get the link to it and where you could, because you could download it from the website. You could download it off of iTunes, Libsyn Classic, iHeartRadio, Tumblr, Facebook, YouTube.
Cool.
So it has the different avenues you can go through.
Beautiful.
And all of it's free. So don't worry about that.
Free is good.
Free is good.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you guys again for listening for this episode. I really enjoyed it. It was fun. Reverend Ken had a lot to say that everyone could take something out of. He was a great guy, fun to talk to. Or he is a great guy. He's fun to talk to. Check out his website. It is attached to the show's description. And there's a couple pictures I put of us on there. Not good pictures, but there's something to look at. And like I said in the beginning of the episode, check out the website ataboolife.com for other fun articles, episodes, and other reading material. Alright guys, have a great week.